Good morning. Here we are again. This is, what day is this? This is Thursday, July 30th, 2020. The reason that I do bring that up is for context in terms of what, for people watching this in the future. I've watched a number of things on YouTube that I'm like going, I really wish I knew what year this was recorded. It would make more sense. So I always want to make sure that I point that out. Yeah, so good morning. In my writing this morning, which I'm going to talk about that in another episode, but I'm going to talk about this today. When I was writing this morning, I wrote something about giving me assistance or something along those lines in terms of me taking action for my highest good. And the minute that I wrote that, and of course that's a very, very common statement that people make in spiritual context to make sure that they're doing something for their highest good. And what occurred to me as I was writing that is, how do I really know that something is for my highest good? And the thing that came to me immediately was this parable of the Chinese farmer. Now, I'm not exactly sure where its origins are, and in my quick search on the internet, it did not reveal exactly where the origins are, but there is a person who made it famous, and he is also a person who brought a lot of Eastern philosophy and practice to particularly the West Coast, but to Western civilization, period. He's very much attributed as a person who has had great influence on Eastern philosophy and religion and spirituality coming to Western civilization, or the Western Hemisphere, or whatever the hell you want to call this thing that we live in here. And this is the story of the Chinese farmer. And I'm going to read this story now, and then I'm going to talk about it. And it relates to what I was writing about this morning, and immediately questioned when I wrote it, saying, is this for my highest good? So, here we go. The Chinese farmer. I'm going to give Alan Watts credit for this. Alan Watts is who I was talking about, and I forgot to mention his name. But I'm going to give him credit for this, even though I don't think he is the original author. But he did at least bring this piece of consciousness to the world. And for that, I'm actually pretty grateful for that. So I'm going to read this. Now, I'm not going to be looking at the camera while I read this, so I'll be back and look back at the camera again, but it's right in front of me on another computer. So here we go. The story of the Chinese farmer. Once upon a time, there was a Chinese farmer whose horse ran away. That evening, all of his neighbors came around to commiserate. They said, "We are so sorry to hear your horse has run away. This is most unfortunate." The farmer said, "Maybe. The next day, the horse came back, bringing 7 wild horses with it. And in the evening, everybody came back and said, "Oh, isn't that lucky? What a great turn of events. You now have 8 horses." The farmer again said, "Maybe." The following day, his son tried to break one of the horses, and while riding it, he was thrown and broke his leg. The neighbors then said, "Oh dear, that's too bad." And the farmer responded, "Maybe." The next day, the conscription officers came around to conscript people into the army. And they rejected his son because he had a broken leg. Again, all the neighbors came around and said, "Isn't that great?" And again, the farmer said, "Maybe." And then Alan Watts adds this point after talking about this parable. And by the way, this whole conversation is readily available online and on YouTube. The whole process of nature is an integrated process of immense complexity, and it is really impossible to tell whether anything that happened in it is good or bad, because you never know what will be the consequence of the misfortune, or you never know what will be the consequences of good fortune. And once again, that's a quote from Alan Watts. So when I did this morning, when I was doing this writing this morning, I immediately said to myself, well, am I attempting to manipulate the universe when I am saying, please direct me in such a way for my highest good? I actually have come to the conclusion that I did not. I am not doing that. Because if I take this topic of being directed for my highest good, and then I add to it for the highest good of others, and then I add to it the energy around the Chinese farmer, where I don't make any judgment about what happens after I make such statements. You know, there's this old line in a lot of places called "Be careful what you pray for." And so the "be careful for what you pray for" part is having a certain expectation about what it is that I prayed for. So if I prayed this morning for direction for my highest good and for my highest good and for the highest good of others, but then I have an expectation about what that's going to be, that my little ego goes, well, I want it to be this way. So when I have an expectation about it, I'm not in the farmer's stance of maybe. And I think it's real valuable to live a life based on maybe. Maybe this is good. Maybe this is bad. We'll see. You know, I've spent a lot of my life, and really up until the last few years, and I still have major flashes on this, even to this day. I have moments that I just think about something that I did in my life, and it just sends shivers down my spine in terms of the stupid things that I have done in my life. And the only reason I call them stupid today is because, first of all, I knew better and I was going against my intuition. And that's always when I move into a regret. However, if I also, judge that as stupid, then I'm missing the point of the parable. Because I wouldn't be here at this particular moment in time. What time is it? Oh, it's 7:30 on Thursday, July 30th, 2020 in the Pacific time zone. I wouldn't be here making this conclusion, making this video, taking these morning spiritual actions, had something been amiss. On Family Guy, Stewie has a time machine. And it's a hilarious bit that I adore. And of course, one of the premises of the time machine, and that's true from Back to the Future, and all of that, is that if we do anything different than what if we go back in time and change something that we quote unquote regretted, then we don't know what the consequences of that would be. There's this one episode where they went back, they changed something, and Stewie and all of them faded away in the present time, which is exactly, of course, a copy of Back to the Future, the original one, and obviously the other ones too, which were all great. But it goes back to this thing about maybe, and not having an attachment to outcomes, not having expectations. I could do a number of videos on expectations. And I probably will. I think that's a really good one. I'll make a note of that after we hang up here. So I'm talking myself through this morning. I'm talking myself through this highest good thing, this decision-making thing, asking the universe for strength to really do the right thing, to just do the right thing, and having no expectations one way or the other about what the outcome is. That's a great way to approach life. And in this current time, and actually this came up the other day when I was really very distraught about what was going on. And I have talked about that in previous videos. But I started to think about, well, okay, this is a very complex universe. It's like Alan Watts said, the whole process of nature is an integrated process of immense complexity, and it is really impossible to tell whether anything that happens in it is good or bad. Well, if that's the case, then I can certainly still stand up and say, I don't believe that what's going on here is appropriate, and I think that you guys are really full of shit, and I can do all of that because that's part of my personal process. And that's part of the complexity, is for me to be able to say what I need to say about stuff. But also be open to the fact that I don't know the bigger picture. I will never know the bigger picture. There's a theory that when I die, I'll be on the other side and I'll see the bigger picture. And I'm pretty good at seeing bigger picture as a practicing human right now, and have been all of my life. People have said this to me over and over again, that I see things from a grander perspective, and I think that I do. However, I don't see all of it. None, not all of it at all. And if I take too much judgment and too much expectations to any of this that's going on right now, I'm the one who's getting hurt. And so it's a bit of a complexity here. It's even actually a bit of a paradox, because it's appropriate for me to say what I need to say, but to let go of the expectations about what will happen as the result of what I have to say, or any particular action whatsoever. So I'm good with asking for direction and strength to take action towards my highest good, and for my actions to be the highest good for others. As long as I don't have an expectation about what the outcome will be. Thank you so much for listening.